Morning, guys. It's about 8 o'clock Tuesday morning, and I want to go over the Honda Spree. So a lot of this is like everybody's, not everybody's, but this is like a lot of people's first bike. They're tons of fun. Just this is what kind of brings scooters back for a lot of people. Childhood memories, and they're cheap and easy to work on. So that's the Honda Spree. Everybody knows about it. So I want to talk about modifying one, what's involved, pros and cons, what you gain, and the downfalls of the Spree, and just kind of want to show you why it's a little bit harder. Well, it's much harder to modify than other bikes. So the main thing with the Honda Spree, the biggest downfall of the Honda Spree is it doesn't have a variator. So this is the side of your transmission. You've got a pulley up here in the front, a pulley in the back, and a belt system. They call it the CVT. CVT transmission. You're extremely limited on this because it doesn't have the variator, which all current scooters now have variators, and none of the Sprees came with them. Some of the Honda Aeros, the Honda Elites did, but these didn't. So that's the biggest thing, is basically with the Honda Spree, the way I explain it with the car is you're basically stuck in third gear the entire time, or something of that nature, where CVT is constantly going to shift to keep you in the power and take advantage. And you don't really have gear ratios, but it's essentially kind of the same thing. And the reason why, so I have a Spree motor ripped down here. So we're going to go over a few things. For one, to my understanding, you can find some replacement pistons and rings out there, but they're new old stock stuff, so you're really limited. These are your cylinder kit fits right here. Your transfers are super small. For one, they're tiny, so that's a big limitation as far as horsepower goes on the Spree. As far as aftermarket parts go, and a lot of you guys have seen me stress this online on YouTube, social media, the cylinder kits that we used to sell years ago for these are horrible, and there's only one company that makes them. They're made in China, and our cost on them was like $30 or $25 back 3-4 years ago. Probably 75 to 80% of them failed. They seized up, they locked up. I personally had one that I could never get running right. My first build was a Spree, and I went to town about every part you could buy on it, and the cylinder just never worked right. So then it became a dealer. I started selling the parts and found that the quality was just so poor. I just quit selling them. They're that bad. So if you're looking for power, my biggest suggestion is to swap a different engine in. You can put an engine in out of the most common swap is going to be the Honda Dio or Elite swap, which is going to be, in pardon our mess here, we just got a ton of stuff in, is going to be this motor out of this bike. So it's a 94 to 01 Elite, and that motor is really simple to put in, and you can do kind of the sky's the limit on that. I mean, it's really easy to do 60, 65, 70. Even if you want to go really mild, you can do 55 really, really easily. This Spree with the Honda Dio motor in it, 94 to 01 Elite, it's probably 2 hours worth of work, maybe 3 hours worth of work to swap it in. You can find those motors for anywhere from $250 to $500 on the high end. If you put that motor in and do just a set of gears and a variator on that Honda Elite motor in this bike, you're doing 50 to 55, and your acceleration's probably 3 times what this is. So cost-wise, and again, I have another video on this. Cost-wise, you're just putting a ton of money into this motor. If you want to keep it, it's nostalgic, you want to keep it original, I totally get that. But when you put that big bore kit on, you're taking, I would say your odds of having that motor, there are guys that have them run good, but the odds of making that cylinder run right, because it's such poor quality, I would say you're 20%, 15-20% odds of making this thing run right. So what guys do is there's a billet intake adapter made to fit on a Honda Elite style intake, and that billet adapter goes on here, and you run the big intake. So that's a really common deal. Make sure if you do that, Honda Bond is seal all this up, because if you don't, it'll leak, and you'll have air leaks, and your 20% chance of that bore working right just went down to 5%. So, and same with bearings and seals. They're not made anymore, to my understanding as well. You can find new old stock stuff, but if your bottom end goes out, your bearings go out, it's better off just to get another used motor. So We're talking about variators. Here's your crank and your spline. There's no room for a variator here. So, I mean, actually, we priced out doing them, but the tooling alone was about $10,000 just to set up to make them. It's possible, but they would, it's not would never, it'd be cheaper for me to hand everybody a check for 20 bucks than it would be for me to make those, because they wouldn't sell for what it would cost to make them. So, just want to show you side by side. This is just, I have tons of motors laying around, but this is the only one that had the CVT cover off, just so you can see how this works for a lot of guys that maybe haven't worked on the spree yet. Here's your variator up here, okay? And this normally just has a regular pulley on it, so it's a fixed pulley. So your belt is here, it's not changing ratio. Here, your motor's spinning, and you're basically at a at 1 gear ratio. As you accelerate, there's typically a plate here, and this variator comes together, and as it comes together, the plate and the pulley, this belt rides further higher and higher and higher, and your ratio on the back gets smaller and smaller and smaller, therefore changing your gear ratio. So when you're riding, you may not hear it or may not feel it on your bike, but the RPM stays the same, but you notice you're gaining acceleration. That's because this ratio is changing. This ratio is getting bigger here in the front, this ratio is getting smaller here in the back, and that's what's causing you to gain speed, because you're changing your ratio. It's just like a automatic on a car, essentially. You're changing gears, you're changing that ratio, giving you higher top speed and taking advantage of your power, where the spree, you can't do that. So your spree is basically like you're starting your car off in 3rd gear. You have your acceleration is pretty poor, and then it taps out really fast because it gets to a certain point where it can't, the motor's not going to create any more horsepower, it's not going to spin higher, and you're not changing your ratio. So with the spree, we are making a few items. We're making a lighter, more aggressive pulley, and we did that at a billet. We did a test. We have a YouTube video on it. We gained about 10 miles an hour, but you do sacrifice bottom end, so great for guys that live in flat areas. But we're gonna do a few things for these bikes that are gonna retain the stock cylinder, because in our opinion, I think we can get about 50 miles an hour out of these if we do maybe $150 to $200 worth of parts on your stock cylinder, stock carb, stock airbox, which you're gonna retain your reliability. Once you go to that Chinese cylinder, all bets are off. So yeah, there's, you can't get clutches for these anymore. You can have them relined, but if you want to keep it simple, these are good. They're great little motors. They're a lot of fun. But if you're looking for something that's going to have killer acceleration and you want to get, 50, 55, 60 miles an hour, then this isn't the motor to do it with. Again, if you want to spend a couple $100 and have fun, they're fun, they're reliable, they'll take a beating, and if you blow it up, big deal, because you can find used motors for about $100 all day long. So, but the main reason for this video, just want to show side by side as to why the spree has its limitations. If you look at the length of this and the diameter compared to, say, a Piaggio, for example, that's the belt goes down the back and goes higher in the front, changing your ratio. But so look how long this crank spline is. That's pretty common to have room for this variator and this plate, where, as you can see, there's no way you could ever fit a normal size variator on here in a belt. So, and it's not so much the diameter, it's so much the length. If you look at the length of the boss on this, it's longer than the whole entire crank. So some guys say Honda Aero cranks can fit in here. I've never tried it myself, and I don't know how your kicker cover and all that stuff would work. That doesn't really add up to me, but maybe some guys have tried it, maybe it's worked, but it seems like kind of reinventing the wheel when you can get a motor that'll it won't quite bolt in, but a Honda Elite, Honda Dio is going to be really, really, really easy to do. So anyways, just kind of want to show the limitations on these and why they're different. The Raz, the older Yamaha Raz is like that too. They're great bikes, they're a lot of fun, but if you're looking to really go 55, 60 and have good acceleration and have a lot of power and have a lot of options, that's definitely not the motor to go with. The only parts I know that exist for performance are the pulleys that we're gonna do, the adapter here to mate on a Honda Elite, Honda Dio style intake manifold. There's a set of gears that exist, but you better make a ton of power to pull those gears. There's one exhaust made, which is actually pretty good, a pretty good gain. But if you want to keep this motor, if it was me, I would do everything but putting that big bore kit on. I would really avoid it, and it's has nothing to do with the people selling them. It's just there are so many that came back that were, I literally had exhaust flanges on these big bore kits just snap right off. I've had cylinders that were oval. I've had guys go through like 3 cylinders, and you know, I've helped them tune. The temps never get high. They seize up, they lock up, and I know because this happened to me as well, where it just never ran right. And then a buddy had one that ran perfect. We both built them at the same time, same place, and his ran great and mine ran terrible. And but then selling them, I found out that just it was a train wreck. So a lot of guys who have been through this with the cylinder kits know there's gonna be a few guys that have had great luck, and then but the bulk amount of people you run into they blow up, they lock up, they seize up, because what can you expect? They're you know, probably cost $5 to make in China. So great bikes, tons of fun. I've had tons of fun on these things. I've wrecked them, jumped them, done all that stuff, and they're blast to ride around. Tiny fuel tanks, but the main thing is just kind of wanted to show the limitations on the Spree motor, and why, if you're gonna do it, you want to go big, just to do a different motor. So hopefully that helps. You guys got questions, let me know. And like I said, we're gonna come out with a few different products that will bolt onto this motor, give you a lot more speed, but also retain reliability, because that's the beautiful thing about the Spree is they're reliable. If you take off the original Honda parts and you're installing Chinese stuff, then you've taken away that reliability. So hope you guys have a good Monday. I don't know what I'm doing today, but I'll figure something out. Wait for a seat cover for this guy, and may start working on that pre-bug there. So, all right, have a good day.